And so I've got that started up with us. We have two of the health coaches from Natural Grocers. We have Luke and Rose, who will be talking us through the Cravings, weight gain, and blood sugar roller coaster. I figured that was a pretty appropriate thing for this time of year. So I will turn it over to them.
Okay, cool. So we'll do a quick introduction on ourselves and then we'll get started. So my name is Luke and I am now over at the Kipling and Coal Mine Natural Grocers. I have a background, I have a bachelor's degree in adult fitness, and I'm a certified nutrition therapy practitioner with the Nutrition Therapy Institute. And I've been with the company for just over 5 years now and a health coach just over a year. So, that's me. I'll give Rose a chance to give her background.
Hello. Yeah, my name is Rose and I'm the health coach at our Arapahoe and Peoria store. And I am a functional nutritional therapy practitioner from the Nutritional Therapy Association. And I've been a health coach with Natural Grocers for about, a year and a half now. And I've been with the company for almost 3 years.
Nice. Cool. So, okay, I'm going to turn off my video and then we will go ahead and get started with the class. So today we're going to be going over cravings, weight gain, and the blood sugar roller coaster. And you know, our bodies are really, truly amazing. We have fail safes and then fail safes for those fail safes, but they're really just short-term. They're for short-term survival kind of thing, and we should really be relying on feeding our bodies well, treating our bodies right, and they respond well to that treatment. So through diet and lifestyle changes, our bodies will treat us right. And this class really kind of shows that process. Okay, so and if you guys have questions, we'll have a chance at the end to have you pop on if you want to ask it for everybody, but use the comment section and we'll use that as well. So just throw in a comment if you have a question. Rose will be able to answer it until her when she does the second half of it. So she'll be able to answer some questions if you have any, and then we can answer them at the end as well. So use that comment page for that. Okay, so just like all of our classes, just a quick disclaimer. This class is not intended to diagnose, treat, or mitigate any disease. Dietary supplements and foods can interact with prescription medications. If you're taking a prescription medication, become informed about the possible interactions. And just a kind of a quick synopsis of the Natural Grocers difference. We were founded on 5 principles. Number 1 is focusing on nutrition education. That's just like classes like this one. We want to educate our communities about healthy living, healthy lifestyle, healthy diet. And we also have coaching sessions. We have nutritional health coaches in general, which we provide a lot of unique services for the company. Number 2, we have high quality standards like 100% organic produce, high dairy standards, quality supplements. And number 3, everyday affordable pricing. We have lots of sales going on each month. Right now we have our resolution reset sale that's going on until the 23rd. And we also have, hotline sales each month. Number 4, we support our communities by, classes like this, supporting our communities, but also we do food donations, supplement donations, and that kind of thing. And number 5, we have great employees. So let's go ahead and get right into it. So We'll start with a brief background on some dietary guidelines. So can anyone guess, I know you guys can't really answer, but can anyone guess when the low-fat dietary guidelines were implemented? Well, it's highlighted right on the screen there. It was 1980. And low-fat guidelines have fallen out of style and are almost like a punching bag for scientific literature. And there's a reason for that. Low-fat diets have failed to live up to their claims of reducing obesity, cardiovascular disease, and diabetes. And you can see from the graph in 1980, when those guidelines were implemented, there was a rise in obesity and those diseases. So randomized controlled trials over the past 2 decades have increasingly supported a high-fat, moderate protein, and low-carb diet, which promotes greater weight loss than the low-fat diets. And these controlled diets have shown the association between the 1980 guidelines and the obesity epidemic. These guidelines urged the public to cut saturated fat from their diet and were challenged by a number of scientists in a congressional hearing. They argued the findings were not based on sufficient evidence and pleaded to allow more research before informing the American public. The guidelines were pushed through and created anyway. Today, we will be explaining why these guidelines are outdated, mainly by discussing blood sugar. So today we'll cover what blood sugar is, how does food impact blood sugar, what happens if we are overusing insulin and what that means, and also what can be done. How can we support healthy blood sugar levels and that kind of thing. So, and knowledge is power. We're here to, Rose and I, our jobs are to inform you guys and to make those informed decisions on your health journey. So that's why we're here, to give you that information so you can make those and empower you. All right. So foods are made up of macro and micronutrients. Macronutrients are proteins, fats, and carbohydrates, and micronutrients are vitamins, minerals, and phytonutrients. Carbohydrates turn into sugar or glucose in the mouth and intestines, and that glucose then enters the bloodstream as blood sugar. So blood sugar is managed, that's the definition of blood sugar. It's the amount of glucose that is in our bloodstream. And glucose is one of the body's main fuel sources. The other being fat, ideally supplying 50 to 70% of our energy. Blood sugar levels are tightly regulated by opposing hormones. So blood sugars are tightly regulated. We have about 1 teaspoon or 4 grams, and that's 72 to 144 milligrams per deciliter in our blood at all times. And if levels were to fall out of that window, counter hormones are secreted. And what kind of hormones are in play? What are the key hormones? It's insulin and cortisol. In response to eating, the pancreas releases insulin, and insulin's first priority is to take excess sugar out of the blood and minimize the damage it can cause. The second step is ensuring to store that sugar as fuel for between meals, or if there's a lot of it, it'll store it away as fat. And these 2 steps are how insulin controls blood sugar levels. So we know how our body takes out blood sugar via insulin, but what about raising it? There are several ways our bodies raise our blood sugar levels. There's the natural endogenous ways, so that's ways that just are natural inside the body. And those are, one is being the breakdown of stored glucose, and that is also known as glycogen. That process is called glycogenolysis. And the other endogenous method is the creation of new glucose by the breakdown of amino acids. And this process is called gluconeogenesis. And of course, there's hormones that will raise our blood sugar, and that is cortisol. Cortisol is going to be that main hormone. It decreases insulin sensitivity and activates the liver and kidney cells to make glucose itself with those endogenous methods. But because cortisol decreases insulin sensitivity, which is not necessarily a good thing, and I'll be talking about this a little later on, we don't want to rely on it as a way to increase our blood sugar for long term. The liver is the major source of endogenous glucose production. So we kind of want to rely on that. For the most part, we can't really control endogenous inside the body methods of producing glucose. Not sure about you guys, but can't really ask my liver to just start breaking down glycogen. But what we can do and what we can control is our meals and what we eat. And our meals certainly impact our blood sugar. With the rise and abundance of high carb, highly processed foods, remember that 1980 guidelines that were started, our blood sugar levels pay the price with huge rapid spikes. The lack of protein, fat, fiber in these foods is what causes such a huge spike. And these are foods such as refined grains, flours, pasta, low-fat or fat-free cereals, bread, bagels, low-fat or fat-free dairy, and fruit juice. And these foods also increase the need for insulin, and I'll be getting into that a little later. So this leads us to the blood sugar roller coaster. And this is a great visual on what happens after we eat a meal with a high carb content. And there's the example on the bottom of the screen there, unbalanced breakfast. This is cold cereal, skim milk, orange juice, and all of these have a high carb content when put together with very little other macronutrients in there. So when we have a huge spikes in blood sugar, it's followed by an insulin spike, brain fog, and fatigue. And insulin signals fat cells to take up sugar and convert it to fat. Remember those 2 steps that insulin takes to remove blood sugar. So it's going to be storing it away for later. High glucose equals high insulin, and high glucose and high insulin equals high stress on the body. And with a spike, a crash is surely to follow. Just like with the spike, a crash is stressful on the body. We get fatigued, decrease in concentration, cravings, and cortisol increase. And we talked about how we raise blood sugar, but in this extreme case, we are relying on cortisol specifically. Cortisol will decrease insulin sensitivity. Again, that's not necessarily a good thing, raising that blood sugar. And with a chronic cortisol response, we get insulin resistance. More on that in a little later. So what sort of meal has a more positive impact on our blood? Those that contain a complex of protein, fat, fiber, and healthy carbs. And healthy carbs include most, if not all, veggies and low glycemic fruits like berries. A meal like this minimizes blood sugar spikes. This allows for fat stores to fulfill energy requirements between meals. And we only use fat when glucose is used up or when insulin, and when insulin is not in play. So let's take a look at another visual. This is the blood sugar lazy river. Just like, so the amount of insulin is just right. Cortisol levels decrease because we aren't in that low blood sugar stress response. And fat is used for fuel between meals. Our bodies may use endogenous methods to create glucose if needed, but remember, fat is used for energy 50 to 70% of the time. So jumping back to when our insulin spikes continuously after poor meal choices, what happens when we overuse insulin? Overusing insulin indicates we are consuming foods that spike blood sugar. Large insulin secretions cause all of our fuel stores to be locked away. Because insulin is overused, fat burning is suppressed mainly for energy. And this gets us into that, what I keep mentioning over and over again, insulin resistance. So chronic use of insulin equals insulin resistance. Causes of insulin resistance vary, but all of these examples on the left side impact insulin. So diets high in refined carbohydrates, inflammation, lack of physical activity, stress and cortisol, and pesticides. Once someone is insulin resistant, insulin cannot do its job and glucose cannot be pulled out of the bloodstream. Tissues become insulin resistant at different rates, and the body tries to overcome insulin resistance by producing more and more insulin. Tissues become insulin resistant at different rates, so which ones are first? Muscle tissue contributes about 60 to 70% of insulin glucose uptake. When the body becomes insulin resistant, it is selective. The first cells to become insulin and glucose resistant are muscle cells, then liver, and then fat cells. Excess blood sugar is toxic, and this is why our bodies work so hard to store it away for later, hence the fail-safes that I mentioned at the very beginning. As the liver takes up more and more than it can actually handle, function becomes impaired, and then it becomes insulin resistant. And you can think of this as like a boy who cried wolf. It just can't handle it anymore, and it'll just stop taking that insulin in. It won't respond to it. It's resistant. Fat cells eventually become the primary storage tissue for glucose, and they begin to grow, leading to fat deposits around the waist. And as fat cells strain to take up extra glucose, they are placed under tremendous stress and begin to produce inflammation. So let's take another look at another great visual. So this is the continuation of that blood sugar roller coaster a couple slides ago, but without dietary intervention, the insulin, our tissues become insulin resistant. Therefore, insulin continues to increase, not taking our blood sugar or managing our blood sugar. So blood sugar increases as well, and it continues and continues and continues increasing. And so we're way out of healthy range levels. So why is blood sugar so harmful? And a lot of health experts, including all of our NHCs for the company here, agree that and talk about the dangers of blood sugar imbalance. So what are some of the dangers? Excess sugar sticks to proteins on our cells and impairs function of those cells. These are called advanced glycation end products, or AGEs, and they contribute to accelerated aging, inflammation, and insulin resistance. And this is a great example of how sugar is toxic and creates this vicious cycle of high blood sugar, the hyperglycemia, AGEs, inflammation, insulin resistance, and so on. It just kind of circles around a really vicious cycle. Insulin resistance has been linked to increased risk of cardiovascular disease. As we become insulin resistant, metabolism is damaged and does not function properly, impairing normal fat and cholesterol metabolism. When combined with high blood sugar, numerous disease processes take place. And long-term insulin resistance leads to the death of insulin-producing pancreatic beta cells. And this will lead to and cause type 2 diabetes. In addition, insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes can lead to a number of dysfunctions. All of these listed on the right side. Cognitive dysfunction, eye retina damage, cardiovascular damage, obesity, weight gain, kidney damage, skin conditions, nerve damage, and impaired hearing. So now I'm going to hand it off to Rose, who will be going over the action plan. What can we do? What can we change in our diet and lifestyle to support healthy blood sugar levels and so on?
All righty. Go to the next slide. Awesome. Okay, so if we want to support healthy blood sugar balance, the most important thing is to just eat a natural food diet. So that really means limiting as much processed food as we can and focusing on vegetables, protein, and 5 servings of vegetables and or fruits. So a serving is about 1 cup raw or a half cup cooked. Quality proteins and healthy fats. And you'll see here on the right, this is called the healthy meal wheel. This is what natural grocers, that's what we use as health coaches to kind of advise just kind of everyone what we want our plates to look like. So half of our plate is going to be veggies, a good amount of protein, good amount of fat, and just a little bit of fruit. And then you'll see there's additional carbs down here. That's more if you're like an athlete or if you can tolerate high carbs, if your body runs that way better. And then you'll see each category towards the bottom. We have just some examples of healthy foods for each of them. And then just as a side note, some people like to replace their processed food with starchy veggies like potatoes, things like that. Those are going to be a little bit more carb heavy, but they're definitely more nutrient dense than grains. So if you're switching from grains, it can be a little bit easier. Grains, unfortunately, don't have a lot of nutrients. They also contain things like lectins and phytates. So those increase inflammation, those disrupt the immune system and mood and behavior. They also increase insulin resistance and elevate blood sugar levels. So we want to just try to limit grains as much as we can. And just to answer a question from earlier, someone was asking about if beans and rice were a good meal and if the type of rice matters, and it does. Some people, you can tolerate white rice a little bit better, but it does have more of an impact on blood sugar because you're going to absorb it much more quickly, because things like brown rice or wild rice are going to have a fiber on them. That's what that casing is on the outside. So that's going to slow down the absorption, and therefore you're not going to have the same kind of spike with blood sugar. And then with any meal, we just want to make sure that we're incorporating a good amount of fat on that. And I'll get into why that's important a little bit later and kind of what that would look like. And one way you can kind of tell what kind of carbohydrate eater you are, other than just paying attention to how you feel. And this took me, unfortunately, a really long time when I got into healthy eating. I was convinced that having a smoothie with tons of bananas and strawberries and yogurt and all those things was being healthy, but then I would feel horrible 30 minutes to an hour later, and I couldn't figure out why. But it's because of the impact it was having on my blood sugar. So if you kind of start paying attention to how you feel about half hour after you have something, it can kind of give you a clue. Another way you can do it is called the saltine cracker test. So what you do is you take a plain unsalted cracker, and then you're going to start a timer for 30 seconds and pop it in your mouth and then start chewing. And you're going to note at what time the flavor changes to sweet. So if it's the first 0 to 14 seconds, you're a full carbohydrate eater. That means your ancestors probably ate a lot of carbs and you can tolerate a higher amount. 15 to 30 seconds, moderate, and then 30 plus. If it doesn't change flavors after 30 seconds, that means you really need to restrict your amount of carbohydrates. Not excessively, I'm not saying that, but just be more mindful of it. And this is based on an enzyme that we have in our mouth called amylase. And it's kind of the first part of the digestive system because it starts breaking down those carbohydrates so that when it goes into our stomach, it's already started the digestive process. And then when it comes to building our meals, we really need to focus on whole food. And this really means focusing on quality. So that means we want to be incorporating healthy fats. So things like butter, coconut oil, palm oil, olive oil, my personal favorite, avocado oil, because it doesn't taste like anything and it's high heat tolerant. So it's great on everything. Sesame oil, cream, ghee, and grass-fed tallow. And some of these, we have something called a customer literature file in every single store. And we have one for fats. It's called choosing fats, and that'll help you kind of know which ones are best for what, because we don't want to be cooking with things like sesame oil or olive oil just because they can oxidize and become toxic in the body. So that's why I like avocado oil and at lower heat butter. So we just want to know what we're using when. And then quality protein. So we want to be looking for animals that were raised on their natural diets and have been able to exhibit their natural behaviors. And something that's really interesting is grass-fed beef actually has, and I mean, this is true for any kind of meat, just not in these proportions, is going to have a better fatty acid profile over conventionally raised meat. So when we look at the fatty acids, we're really looking for a good ratio of omega-6 to omega-3. And I'm sure you've heard of both of those. So omega-6, unfortunately, when we have a lot of it in our diet, especially from like canola oil, plant oils, anything like that, those are really high in omega-6 fatty acids, and they can be pro-inflammatory in the body. So we want to be balancing that with omega-3s. And our ancestors were eating closer to about a 1-to-1 ratio, and conventional meat today is about a 28-to-1 ratio. So for every 1 omega-3, you have 28 omega-6. So it's kind of out of balance. Whereas with grass-fed meat, it's a 2-to-1, so much, much closer to what our ancestors were eating. And grass-fed beef is also going to be higher in zinc, CoQ10, L-carnitine, vitamins A and E, and CLA. So much better overall nutritionally. And then as far as quality for our dairy, this is very important too. So dairy from pasture-raised cows, and then meat from grass-fed cattle, and eggs from pasture-raised chickens. And they're all going to have healthier nutritional profiles than conventional products. And this, if you're vegetarian, just keep in mind, if you're getting your proteins from carbs, you are going to have more carbs in your diet, and it will have more of an effect on your blood sugar. And protein and fat, they're great non-carbohydrate calories, and they can stimulate the production of important hormones that tell us when we're full, and they help support healthy blood sugar levels. And protein and fat do so many other things in the body, like helping with other hormone productions, like our sex hormones, and proteins are kind of the doers in the body. So they're going to be what helps with signaling. They're going to be what helps build our muscles. They go around the body and kind of, they're not just for energy. They do a lot. And then fat and protein both help to slow down the digestion of carbs. So that's why it's really important to incorporate fat and protein at every meal as much as you can, or if you're eating fruit or something like that, it can help to slow down that absorption of carbs. And you may have noticed that the fats I mentioned, a couple of them are known for their saturated fat content. And as we kind of mentioned earlier, we were told that saturated fats are bad. And so taking a little bit of a deeper look, we're going to find out why saturated fats, what we've been told is maybe not all there is to the story, because we've been told for a very long time that red meat, eggs, and bacon are going to be raising our cholesterol. So saturated fat has in fact been shown to have a neutral effect on HDL and LDL ratio. So we've all heard, that fat and cholesterol, they're going to be raising our LDL, which is bad. But studies have shown that when it does raise it, it's raising it with the HDL, which is more important than one being higher than the other. It's that ratio that we have. And the studies that have shown this, that there's a connection with raising the LDL, were all long-term. So with the exception of one, every long-term study has shown that there was no association between saturated fat and cholesterol. And then a meta-analysis that looked at 21 different studies with 350,000 participants found no relationship with heart disease or stroke and saturated fat. And saturated fats are the preferred fuel for the heart, and sugar is what raises, is the one that only raises LDL cholesterol. So you can imagine there's a lot of money in sugar. And the fats are found in butter and coconut oil, support the immune system, and coconut oil contains special fats that can provide quick and stable energy. So if you've heard of MCT oil, this is derived from coconut oil. And what's really cool about it is when it comes into our body, number one, we don't need bile to absorb it. So most fats, you need bile so the body has a chance to break it down into smaller bits to absorb it. But with MCT oil, you don't. And then instead of getting taken through the lymphatic system like other fats are, it's taken directly to the liver, where it's made into ketones, which the brain and the heart and the rest of the body can use as fuel. So that's why it's really great for cognitive support and energy. And then when it comes to fruit, naturally, of course, with sugar, naturally occurring is going to be the preferred way. Fruit provides carbohydrates, antioxidants, vitamins and minerals, and the ever important fiber. And just keep in mind that some fruit has more sugar than others. Some high sugar things are things like tangerines, cherries, grapes, pomegranates, mangoes, figs, bananas, and dried fruits. And then dried fruit is going to have much higher amounts of sugar per gram. So when you're sitting there just munching on dried fruit, you're probably going to eat more because it doesn't have that water content. So it's going to have higher amounts of sugar. But some low sugar options are things like cranberries, avocado, which I don't really think of as a fruit, but it is. Raspberries, blackberries, strawberries, apples, and peaches. So if you're looking for just some fruit on the side, those can be some good options. And then adding fat and or protein can help minimize the impact on blood sugar. So that's why it's good to have, apples with things like cheese or peanut butter, just pairing with something like that, just so you're kind of slowing that down and not having such a big impact on your blood sugar levels. And then next, this is going to be kind of just a example of just a well-balanced meal. So we have two eggs that are scrambled in a tablespoon of butter, half a cup of red peppers, half a cup of mushrooms, a slice of melted cheese, 2 pieces of bacon, of turkey bacon, and 1 medium pear. So if you look down on the right, they're all really well balanced. So you're getting those 32 grams of carbs, but 10 of that is fiber. So that means it's going to stay in your gut and it's not going to impact your blood sugar. Got a good amount of fat, almost the same as the amount of protein you're getting. So it's good to keep those all balanced so that your body's getting everything that it needs and not just excess fuel, because that is going to be impacting your blood sugar and sending you on that blood sugar roller coaster. And then when you're making the choices to avoid sugar, it's important to know that artificial sweeteners are not the solution. So when we think about having something sweet, or when we start tasting it, our food is going to have a natural reaction to it, right? We're going to start secreting insulin. Our body doesn't know the existence of artificial sweeteners. So it starts making that insulin, which locks fuel sources away in the cells. And so our cells are told, hey, fuel is coming, so just like stand by, and it locks away all that fat, locks away all the glycogen, so the carbohydrates that we've stored, and then nothing comes. And so our cells are left feeling hungry, and so we're gonna get hungry sooner and start craving sweets and fatty foods. And then what's even worse is many artificial sweeteners disrupt the delicate microbiome that exists in our digestive tract. And this balance influences inflammation and appetite. And this is more closely related to things like aspartame, which I'm sure you've heard of, and sucralose, and rather than things like stevia or monk fruit. So as far as the disruption of the microbiome in our digestive system. So supporting healthy blood sugar levels, this is kind of a breakdown of things we want to avoid, use caution with, and then damaging foods. So of course, really want to try to avoid refined grains. So things like bread, cereals, things like that. Sweetened beverages with added sugar. And I would throw in here something that I've seen a lot of, which is replacing sugary drinks with things like kombucha. Kombucha can be great as a treat occasionally because it does have probiotics in there, but it's not a free ticket to just have 40 grams of sugar in a sitting. It's still going to be affecting your blood sugar levels negatively. So if you're going to drink kombucha, just do it sparingly, or just do it in small amounts. If I get one, I drink, I don't know, a quarter of one in a sitting. Fat-free sweetened dairy, so things like yogurt. Always look and read the back of your packages. Again, that fat helps to slow down the absorption of all of the carbohydrates that are in the milk. So when you remove that, it's just a straight punch to your blood sugar. And then exercise caution with high glycemic fruit and vegetables. So it can be helpful to, especially with those, to pair them with some proteins or fat. Fat-free and low-fat dairy, for the same reason I mentioned before. Agave and high fructose foods. So agave, for a long time in the health food industry, we were taught that this was like a great alternative to pretty much anything, especially for vegans, as an alternative to honey. But it turns out it has this very similar effect to high fructose corn syrup on our blood sugar levels. And then damaging foods, artificial sweeteners, trans fats. So trans fats are basically, they do occur in nature in things like butter, but they're not in regular, because butter is slightly processed, right? But basically what happens is with trans fats, they're forced into a different configuration than they're supposed to be in. And so they're kind of lopsided and they make an unnatural configuration, and our cells will say, hey, this is just a fat, I know what this is, and it'll put it into our cell walls. But since it doesn't sit right, since it's at a weird configuration, it can basically make the cell compromised, because the cells put them into the cell wall. So you have basically a brick that's not this shape it's supposed to be in your outer wall of your fortress. So that's kind of a little bit on trans fats. And then omega-6 fats and vegetable oils. So again, because they become oxidized easily, and they can just be pro-inflammatory in the body. And then as much processed foods as you can. And I know in the beginning, if you're not in the healthy food industry, it can be really overwhelming to just switch 180 to just vegetables. So processed food can be a much, as far as like the healthy ones, or not healthy, but the ones that don't have quite as many additives and preservatives as traditional processed foods, those can be a good alternative, at least in the beginning, to where you're kind of getting your footing into the natural food world. And then some strategies for success. So something to keep in mind is that your brain is going to fight you. Sugar is connected to the pleasure centers in our brain, and lectins from grains attach themselves to opioid receptors. So make sure that you have a plan for yourself. Structure your days, your meals, everything ahead of time, so you're not caught off guard having to last minute find something to eat and having to go through a drive-through. So plan out what you want to eat to avoid temptation and ensure that you have your healthy food ready with you. Preparing ahead of time, this also saves you so much money. When I cook my meals for the week, when I just sit down on a Sunday and get all my meals ready and not have to shop, even though I shop at natural grocers, it still saves me a lot of money. And then I know what I'm going to be eating and won't, be wasting anything. And then bring food with you. So same thing. So prepare food ahead of time and then bring it with you. And that way you won't have to be making decisions on the fly and have limited options. And then just remember that fat and protein can help to balance blood sugar and help make sure that you don't go hungry. So they're going to help keep you fuller for longer. So make sure you're incorporating those. And then me and Luke, we do free one-on-one coaching sessions. They're an hour long. So if you wanted to set up one of those, you can call either of us at our stores, or you can do it online. And we can kind of go through what you're eating. And I love taking it slow with people, kind of making it something that's realistic and sustainable. And I'm sure Luke does too. So yeah, just call and you can set up a one-on-one coaching session with us, and we can kind of get a plan for you and kind of give you some tricks that we've learned along the way. And then some other tips and tricks. These are just some ideas. So apple cider vinegar can help slow down the breakdown and absorption of carbohydrates, and it helps to slowly rise the blood sugar after a meal. It can also help to stimulate, why can't I think of it, of stomach acid production. And that kind of helps the whole cascade of your digestive process to make sure that you're properly absorbing all of your food and getting the most out of it. And then resistant starch is formed from starch when it is cooked and then cooled, and it's not broken down in the intestines, so it's not going to contribute the same way to blood sugar. And then focus on foods that have fiber, fat, and protein. So these are nutrients that are not going to directly get turned into blood sugar and can help to slow down the absorption of the carbohydrates. And then OPCs and other polyphenols can actually slow down the breakdown of some carbohydrates in the intestines, supporting healthy blood sugar balance. And then some supplements. A couple ideas are fish oil, magnesium, and vitamin D. And supplements that support insulin function are things like chromium, milk thistle, which is really great for the liver, NAC, also known as NAC, and biotin. And then supplements that support health, and those with high blood sugar are things like alpha-lipoic acid, which is happens to be our nutrient to know about right now. So we have a lot of really good deals going on for the quarter. So for January, February, and March. It's a really excellent free radical scavenger, so that can help to modulate inflammation in the body. It supports the immune system and brain health. It also supports the liver and our mitochondria. And our mitochondria are basically the powerhouses of the cell. So they're the ones that are taking in that fuel that we feed our bodies and converting it into energy. And alpha-lipoic acid, it helps to support them by neutralizing free radicals that are produced during that process. And then fish oil, it helps through multiple mechanisms. So it helps to modulate inflammation through multiple pathways, helps to support body weight and composition, and helps the cells listen to the message being sent by insulin. And vitamin D supports healthy blood sugar balance through multiple functions as well. So here's kind of an overview. In fat cells, vitamin D modulates inflammation. Vitamin D supports healthy microbial balance, which is a factor critical for healthy levels of inflammation. It helps with insulin function. So it helps the muscle cells respond to insulin. And it supports insulin function obtained from modest exercise, and it can be augmented by vitamin D supplementation. And then vitamin D supports the health of insulin producing pancreatic cells. And this is receptors in the pancreas that only turn on when there's enough vitamin D. And then vitamin D regulates calcium levels, which control insulin release. Calcium also helps to modulate the pH balance, so the acidity of the body, among many other super important things like contraction of muscles. So we want to make sure in bone health, we want to make sure we're getting good amounts of calcium. And then chromium and magnesium. Low chromium and magnesium impair the ability of fat and muscles to pull glucose out of the bloodstream. And low magnesium is extremely common in our country. And chromium and magnesium both work at multiple steps inside the cell to help it respond effectively to the signals of insulin. And magnesium has the added benefit of modulating inflammation throughout the body and has been shown to support the liver's ability to produce glucose, preventing blood sugar from bottoming out. And these supplements are particularly important for people who have dietary deficiencies or poor gut health, which can lead to low levels of magnesium or chromium in the body. So if you have chronic diarrhea or fat malabsorption, this can lead to that magnesium depletion. And then as far as lifestyle, so lack of sleep can lead to weight gain and insulin resistance and increased cortisol. And that's because cortisol, again, as we were seeing with the blood sugar roller coaster, that's what the body releases when our blood sugar levels bottom out, which can lead to poor sleep. That's why we say don't eat a bunch of carbs before bed if you're waking up at midnight or 3 o'clock in the morning. That can be a sign that your blood sugar levels are dropping too low in the middle of the night. And so we want to eat something more like protein or fats before bed so that we have more consistent fuel throughout the night, so that our cortisol isn't waking us up and we can't go back to sleep. And then aim to get 7 to 9 hours per night, creating a dark environment. You can try an eye mask or blackout curtains, and then remove electronics from the bedroom. Electronics like TVs or cell phones, they emit blue light, which activates our pineal gland inside of our brain, which is what modulates our sleep and wake cycle. So it's what tells our brain, oh, the sun's still out, I can stay awake. So if your body is getting that signal, you're going to have a harder time going to sleep because your body is going to think it's the middle of the day still. And then exercise. So it's good to be fit. So try walking at least 10 minutes per day at a brisk pace. Spend 1 to 5 hours per week moving briskly, perform resistance training and heavy lifting, and then sprint or move quickly at least once per week. So trying to move our bodies. And then in summary, these are all the things that eating simple carbohydrates do. So it puts you on the blood sugar roller coaster. It elevates insulin and overuses it. And you store fat and do not burn it. So you're locking it in. Your body's saying, nope, I need more. I'm just going to keep burning it. Or sorry, I'm just going to keep storing it. And this leads to weight gain, food cravings, exhaustion, and mood issues. So step 1 is to eat a healthy and delicious diet. So really trying to eliminate as much processed food as possible, focusing on protein, vegetables, and fat, and making sure that we're not afraid of fat, because fat should be at every meal in a good amount. And then step 2, again, just quitting eating those simple carbs and other damaging foods. So trying to eliminate things like those vegetable oils. And then step 3 is supplementing and lifestyle support to support healthy blood sugar levels. So sleep, exercise, and then supplements if it's necessary. And then at Natural Grocers, we have pretty great resources. We have a really impressive book department. And I'm not just saying that, I love our book department. And there is a million books that can kind of give you some basic guidelines or some really in-depth guidelines, as well as cookbooks, just anything you can think of. And then, like I mentioned before, we have something called the customer literature file, and they're usually a great cabinet located somewhere in the vitamins department. You can always ask an employee And this is a great resource. There are researched articles on most any topic you can think of, and they're free to take. So some ones I would suggest would be brain health and blood sugar balance, foods for blood sugar balance, and then there's one on metabolic syndrome as well that might be interesting. But any supplement you can think of, there's usually at least a CLF on it. And that is all I have. So we are able to take questions now. So one would be, would hummus and vegetables be a good snack, protein and fats in the hummus? Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good one. And then is oatmeal a good breakfast alternative? Are nuts good for you? And which ones are best? So it depends on the type of oatmeal. Oatmeal is going to have, it is really carbohydrate rich. Steel cut are definitely going to be preferred over the instant ones just because you're getting more of that fiber, so you're going to slow it down. Adding things like butter or coconut oil could help with that, or almond butter, something like that, so you're getting more fat and protein to kind of balance it in there. It's not a favorite, but it's not the worst also. And then, yeah, nuts are a great snack. I mean, don't, of course, like with anything, overdoing anything is not healthy, right? But things, I think cashews, and do you remember, what's the other one that's the highest in carbohydrates? Do you remember, Luke? Cashews, and probably macadamia nuts. Those are the two highest in, in carbohydrates. But I mean, if you're doing, they still have fat, they still have protein. So if you're just eating them as a snack, they're great for that. Yeah, and then Claire said that she recently discovered buckwheat as a breakfast porridge, which is high in protein and lower in carbs. Yeah, it's a good alternative. And then someone asked, if breakfast is healthy, is it bad to have the same thing every morning? I mean, if you're getting some variety in your diet elsewhere, I don't think so. Especially if you're creating like a healthy routine for yourself, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Just as long as the rest of your diet has some variety.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, you would know if it's starting to bug you, if you're starting to be resistant or something to something you're having every day. But I think it makes it easy to just have something every day the same, or add a little something else in there, a different spice or fat or whatever it might be, protein, just to kind of change it up. But cool. Okay, I'm gonna talk briefly about something that's coming up at all of our stores. It's the keto reset diet. And while I'm talking, you guys can shoot up more comments and we can answer them after. But we have our keto reset diet, that's our class series that's coming up this week. So starting tomorrow, there's going to be a live class. You guys can go online, watch the class, and then after there's review sessions, and that's kind of like what we're doing now. It's going to be the option to ask questions about it, go through a review of what was gone over for that class, and those review sessions are taught by all the other NHCs at each store. So both Rose and I are going to be doing our own review sessions for our stores, and you have to sign up for those. It's required to have a sign up. Otherwise, we can't send you an invite for it. So you have to be able to sign up online. And if you go to our website, you'll see just naturalgrocers.com. You'll see this little banner up on the top, scrolling through what's going on right now. We have our resolution reset sale going on. There's some giveaways, all that kind of stuff. And then if you cycle through to the keto reset and hit learn more. Yeah, learn more. So can you guys see my screen okay?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So once you hit the keto reset and learn more about it, you can see that there's step 1. You're going to join the classes every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Mountain Time. And they'll be going on for the next 4 weeks. So starting tomorrow at 6, and then after that, you'll have to go through and sign up for, let's see, the review session. So if you go down and you sign up for the day and times for review sessions, you'll see this option to go by state, and you can click on, there's a lot of Colorado stores. You can go, I mean, since it's virtual, you can really go anywhere, but we have all of our Colorado stores. Actually, that's not, sorry. So if you click on the day and time, yeah, it'll go by the state, and then you can click on, you can choose either Rose over at Arapahoe or me over at Kipling and Coal Mine, and sign up for our times to do those review sessions. So it's just something cool. The reason I mention it is not only because it's coming up pretty soon here, but also everything we talked about today kind of falls under that keto, the keto lifestyle of low carbohydrate. Watching that, it's just a little more strict, maybe not a little more, it's a lot more strict of a diet. Getting to ketosis, it's a whole other topic, but that's what those classes on Wednesday are for, and then what we're doing for those review sessions to answer questions about those. So look up that, sign up for the classes and the review sessions, and then learn more. It's good to be informed. Even if you're not interested in doing keto yourself, you can be informed about it, and you can teach others that may be interested, so let's see. Okay, good. Yeah. Okay, cool. So, and then Rose mentioned it, coaching sessions for, you guys can call our stores, sign up for a coaching session. We talk about blood sugar a lot in our coaching sessions. So if you want a little more in-depth, we did a very broad presentation on, healthy lifestyle and blood sugar. But if you want a little more geared towards yourself, you can sign up for coaching sessions, and we can figure out some goals for you, a real personalized way to do it. So, and then for all of you guys for participating today, you guys will receive a $5 coupon, $5 Empower coupon. So if you're an Empower member, you can get that coupon and use it, and we'll have them at the store. You can go to either Rose or my store to get the coupons for participating. So we'll be ready for you. So I think that's everything that I wanted to mention after. So.
And I did see one comment talking about eggs, that eggs are not great in the diet. And that really just depends on the person. For a long time, we were taught that eggs were bad just because of the cholesterol content. But 75% of the cholesterol in our body is made by the body, and only 25% is absorbed through food. So it's not really an issue for that. Some people are just going to be more sensitive to it. So if you find that it's not something that agrees with your body, then absolutely cut it out. But yeah, it is in a lot of things, especially processed food.
Yeah. And there's some good alternatives to eggs. It's just a really easy way to nutrient dense food to kind of throw it in the morning. But if you're vegan or sensitive to eggs, because eggs are a common allergy, then you know, finding something else. You can cut up some sweet potatoes and throw some oil on them and make your own little hash brown cubes or something like that, and have another protein source with it in the morning. You know, there's good alternatives to the eggs. So
yeah, and there's lots of replacements. I'm sorry, I'm getting terrible feedback.
oh,
I think, okay, maybe I'm okay. There's lots of alternatives online as far as baking and stuff, but any vegan products are not going to have it. So if you are going to eat something like that, just looking for vegan products can be a good alternative. And we have a couple of ones for baking recipes. I know flaxseed and I believe water are one that some people use in recipes. I think I've also heard of applesauce. So there's good things that you can do to replace it instead. Oh yeah, and someone said psyllium husk works well in baking, yeah. Are there any last minute questions?
yeah. Cool. Well, thank you guys for your participation and asking questions. You can always give either of us a call. Rose is at the Arapahoe store, and then I'm at the Kipling and Coal Mine store, kind of on either side of the Bemis library. So yeah, if you ever have any questions, feel free to give us a call and we'll be happy to help you.
All right, well, thank you so much for the excellent presentation, and thank you all for attending. There was a question in the chat about the recording. The session has been recorded, and that will be posted on the Bemis Library YouTube channel. Give me a day or two. Sometimes it takes a little while for it to go through the buffer before it actually gets posted, but that's where it will live, along with the previous programs with Natural Grocers. So thank you all so much, and have a lovely rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.